The second session this morning is Dr. Go, who is coming to us from the University of Saskatchewan, from the Department of Mechanical Engineering. In particular, she has quite a bit of experience over quite a number of years with air pollution-related issues. So I'll ask her to come forward and present her work on validating air dispersion models using odor plumes measured by trained field odor assessors. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to acknowledge my co-author, Zhu Gao. She's a Ph.D. student, and she did most of the work. A lot of people already talk about using air dispersion models to predict odors, but how accurate the predictions are, we know very little about that. So what we would like to do is to compare the field odor plume or field odor experience with the odor dispersion model, the results. And also, when we get the air dispersion results for odors, what are we going to do with the results? How we're going to use the odor predictions for the zoning or setback determination? What kind of odor standard should we use? Is that 1 OU, 2 OU, 99 percentile, or 898? And also, how do we verify an odor complaints using air dispersion model results? So to answer these questions, we need to know how accurate air dispersion models are for odor. Oh. This is different than what I expected, the animation. So we probably need to go back. Okay, so the objective. Okay. No, it's okay. So the objective is to use field merit odor plumes to validate air dispersion models. We selected the paused. It's paused. Okay, we selected 2 study sites. One is a municipal wastewater facility. Another one is an ASNO plant. And then we did odor plume merriment around those 2 sites. We used AirMod and CalPath to predict odor concentrations of those plumes. And then we need to develop odor concentration intensity correlation, because the odor plumes are measured in terms of odor intensity, and the odor dispersion modeling result is in terms of odor concentration. Without knowing their correlation, we cannot compare those 2. And so after we compare those 2, we can generate peak to mean ratio to adjust the modeling results. And then we also did a long-term odor prediction. The only purpose is to compare. It's just go by itself. So only reason is to compare the long-term results with the hourly plume results to see how different they are. And then, well, it goes by itself. Sorry about that. I don't know how it. So this is a wastewater treatment plant.
Just press spacebar to go to the next one.
Okay. Okay, this is a wastewater treatment plant. It's next to a very small town, and then it's very close. The distance is 100-something meters to the closest residence. There are 2 odor sources, primary lagoon and secondary lagoon. And then this is the ASNO plant site, and then it's outside of a small city on the prairies. It's all flat land. And then for odor merriment, did I miss one? Okay, so for odor merriment, we did all the merriment in our olfactometry lab. We have 8 pods olfactometer. We use 8 panelists to do the measurement. And then for odor intensity, we use inbuilt no intensity scale. Basically, is intensity level 1 is very faint odor. It has odor concentration of 25. Intensity 2 is faint odor, concentration of 72 OU. And then level 5 is very strong odor, over 1,800 odor units. So we ask the panelists to memorize the strengths of each level of odor. When they do the merriment, they try to match the sample odor strength with the level of an butyl scale. So they assign odor intensity accordingly. And then for field plume merriment, for each site, we did 2 days of merriment, and we brought 5 odor panelists to the site. And then we locate them downwind from the odor source at different locations, different distances. And then we follow the VDI standard for field plume merriment. So every plume lasts 10 minutes for merriment. Every 10 seconds, the panelists need to remove their nose mask and take a sniff and write down the odor intensity. So for 10 minutes session, they record down 60 data points. At the end of the session, they write down the hedonic tone. And for odor emission merriment, we use vacuum box and tether bags. And then for the liquid surface, for the wastewater treatment plant, and also another, and the wastewater storage pond for the ethanol plant, we use the flux chamber, to do the merriment. And for getting the odor concentration intensity relationship, what we need to figure out is the coefficients A and B in this OC-OI relationship. This is a commonly accepted OI-OC relationship. For each type of odor, A and B, those coefficients are different. So what we did is we take air samples from the source, we dilute the samples to different levels, like from 2 times up to over 2,000 times. And for each diluted sample, we take odor concentration intensity merriment, and then based on the data pool, we figure out what is the coefficient A and B for each odor source. Oh, what's wrong? It just goes by itself. Okay, and for odor dispersion modeling, for plume modeling, we treat the odor panelists as discrete receptors. And then for the 5-year long-term odor dispersion modeling, we use grid receptors, and we use 5-year meteorological data. And we consider topography, we consider land use as mixed urban and agricultural land. And then for ethanol plant emission, it's constant all year round. However, for the wastewater treatment plant, we only consider the warm season from April to October. So April to May, we use the April emission rate. And then from June to October, we use September odor emission rate, because April and May is peak emission season. The emission rate is 12 times of September emission rate. And here's the results for odor emission. You can see for the wastewater treatment plant, the odor concentration is really low, and then the emission rate is low as well. And for the ethanol plant, the odor concentration is much higher, and then total emission rate is much higher. So for the OC-OI correlation, this is what we generated for primary lagoon for the wastewater site. You can see it's a very neat correlation with R-square of 0.9. However, the problem is we cannot use this correlation to convert the field odor intensity to concentration. Why? Because what we're dealing with, all the model predicted odor is below 30 OU, and then which is outside of the applicable range of this equation. If we plug anything OC lower than 60, what it's going to result in is negative odor intensity. So we cannot use this correlation. Similar story for the ethanol plant site. For each source, we got a very good correlation. However, it doesn't work for the lower range part. So what we end up use is n-butanol correlation. So n-butanol coefficient A is 0.91 and B is negative 1.89. So the justification for this is the ethanol plant smell is similar to n-butanol smell, but for the wastewater treatment side, it's similar to animal barn smell. So this is the best we can do. There's some similarity. So then we use that n-butanol correlation, OCOI correlation, to do this treatment. And then this is odor plume field merriment. This is for the wastewater treatment site. And then we measured a total of 5 plumes, and the distance from anywhere from 50 meters to up to 400 something meters. This is the average distance of the plumes. And then you can see the average odor intensity measured is quite low. It's lower than intensity 1, and some are very, very low. And then the average model predicted odor concentration is very low as well, except this plume. Somehow this plume got very high. We don't know the reason yet. And then if we compare CalPAF with AirMod, the CalPAF predictions are always much, much lower than AirMod. So we find a similar result for the ethanol plant site. We measured a total of 15 plumes, and from distance from like 200, 300 meters up to 3 kilometers, and this is the average distance. Average intensity 1.2, average odor concentration by AirMod is 0.33, so you compare those two, and then by CalPAF is 0.07. So it's this is quite different. So what we did is we use n-butanol correlation to convert every receptor's intensity to odor concentration, and that concentration is compared with model predictions. Then we generate the peak to mean ratio for the source and for the model. So that is the example of the prediction, model prediction compared with merriment. So this, for example, this value 24 is measured odor concentration, which is measured odor intensity converted to concentration. And then this 30 in brackets, that is the model predicted concentration. So that actually is model prediction times the peak to mean ratio. So you can see after the peak to mean ratio treatment, the measured and modeled odor concentration, they match quite well. Okay, so this table summarizes the peak to mean ratio for the ethanol site if we use n-butanol conversion. And then we got for AirMod, we got 200, about 200. For CalPAF is 500. So what this means is for this ethanol site, CalPAF predictions are much lower than AirMod. And then this selected plume, this column, what that means is we get rid of some of the plume predictions that are has very low concentration or very high concentration. We keep the reasonable ones. We got the results like that. So it's quite similar to the values we got from our plumes. So, and then for the ethanol site, we also use direct comparison of OC and OI without doing n-butanol conversion. So what we got, the PTM, this D means direct, is 3.5 and 3.4 for selected plumes for AirMod, and 7.5 for CalPAF. So the average of 15 and 7.5 is about 11. So it's convenient to use this PTM because you don't need to do n-butanol conversion. After you do dispersion modeling, you just type this PTM, and then you can directly compare with the field measured odor intensity. And then for the wastewater treatment plant, we got PTM value of 11 for AirMod and 17 for CalPAF. We didn't do the direct PTM value generation because the data size is small. And another question is how accurate the model predictions are. Are they acceptable in the acceptable range? So based on US EPA recommended parameter, the fraction bias. We calculated the fraction bias for our model prediction. So the acceptable range is plus minus 0.67. What that means is predicted predicted concentration is within plus minus 200% of the field measured concentration. So they allow for 200% uncertainty. So if we do that, and then we can see those red values, they're all FB values. They are below or a little bit above this range, acceptable range. So what we would like to recommend is for FB values for odor, we should allow for a higher FB value because of the large uncertainty involved in odor measurement itself. So we all know about that. And then those are two examples of the predicted plumes. This is by air mod, this is by CalPath. We can see they are quite different. Air mod is narrower with a higher odor concentration, but for CalPath, it is spread out and was low odor concentration. That is why you need large value to address the prediction. And this is for ethanol plant. It's a quite similar story. And this one is for a 5-year long-term prediction for the wastewater treatment site. And to read this is the odor occurrence for one odor unit by air mod. And then I have to go back, I think. Okay. So this outside contour is 99.5% odor annoyance free frequency, means occurrence frequency for 1 OU on this line is 0.5%. And then this second line contour is 1% of occurrence or 99% of odor free, and then 98%. So depending on the odor standard you choose, you can determine like what is setback distance or impact area. And then this is the predicted by CalPath. And then what we can compare those two models is the CalPath predicted high concentrations than air mod. So this is just opposite of what we just observed from the field like hourly prediction. So in that one, CalPath under predict, but this one is over predict, so resulting in larger impact area. And then this one is a 5-year model results for the EPE site, so air mod and CalPath. It's a similar story. And then we did this not just for 1 OU, we did it for 0.5 OU up to 6 OU. So if you lose your odor standard, you allow for 1 OU, your impact area can be small. If you allow for 2 OU, impact area can be smaller, and for 4 OU, it can be even smaller, depending on the odor standard you pick, what odor concentration, what allow annoyance frequency. Okay, this is by CalPath. It's a similar story. Okay, to the conclusion. So what we learned is the OI-OC relationship that we generated by our experiment cannot be used for this study because it's out of the applicable range. So we need further study to learn how to convert OI-OC at the low range. And for the purpose of comparing model predictions with field odor measurement or to verify odor complaints, the model predictions should be adjusted, use peak to mean ratio. So all the models, they underpredict. So we have to use large values to bring the modeled results back to the field experience by the sniffers or receptors. And those PTM values are source-specific and model-specific. In the model evaluation by Plumes and CalPath underpredict, however, the opposite is for long-term prediction, CalPath overpredict. So what this means, if we want to determine long-term odor impact, odor criteria should be source-specific and should be model-specific. And then air mod should be used for dispersion modeling purpose. Yeah. So if you want to use CalPAF, then the odor standard should be reduced to achieve the same setback distance. Okay, more work is needed to verify the finding of this study. So I would like to acknowledge my project team and the funding provided by Saskatchewan Environment and NSERC. And assistance come from Saskatchewan Environment and those two facilities. Thank you. Any questions? So I got some odor persistence pictures. Yeah.
Any questions?
Could you spend a little bit more time on the, if I understood you correctly, you mentioned that April and May emissions were significantly higher.
Yes.
Was it as measured or as?
It's as measured. As measured and as experienced. So we measured April emissions back in 2012. The emission rate is 12.5 times higher than September emission rate. So when we went there for the plume measurement in September, early September, we barely can smell anything, even beside the pond. That is why the detection distance is so short. It's only 300 meters. But in April, you imagine like 12 times higher emission rate. So all the town will be affected.
I understand. So you only had 3 months to work with, correct? You had April, May, and September, and you compared between them.
Yeah, okay. For the long-term emission, we use September emission rate. So from June to October, in our calculation. April, May, we use April's result. We only did two time periods measurement.
Thanks very much. I think we'll have to move on to the next speaker. Of course, there'll be lots of opportunities